that. So it was not a surprising display on either part. She's an accomplished rhetorician, very articulate, and quite, lively. And he is just a curmudgeonly, cranky old man who he just blurts out what he thinks and doesn't care what other people think. Or
Your initial gut reactions of what you saw over the last couple of hours.
well, I'm going to look also at when I've done a lot of this sort of thing as a journalist, and certainly in political campaigns, campaign speeches. And if you just briefly ignore the sound or turn the sound off and look at what they're doing on camera, it's very telling. He never once looked at her. He never once even had the respect after she offered her hand and he shook it reluctantly at the beginning. He never even acknowledged her existence in the room. He looked sour. He has no sense of humor. And all he does is string together a series of slogans that he's concocted over the years, not necessarily making any sense out of them. And he does not respond or react to anybody else except to blurt out more of his slogans. And he did get caught out twice for out and out lies in the debate. And so by contrast, she was articulate. When he would make a point and she had a chance to rebut, she would actually weave his rebuttal into something that was factual and made a point that people could, relate to. So he was just a billboard. He was just a blurt, a series of blurts, and she was there to debate. And, it really showed up the difference in the quality of these individuals, in my opinion. I mean, this woman has been in public life most of her life as a prosecutor, attorney general, then senator, then vice president. She's been in the White House 4 years, the same duration he's been. He hasn't been in public life, and he does not know how to interact, dialogue, debate, or, come up with solutions by collaboration.
I think Donald
So
Trump said in his
I don't think he's not exactly presidential material.
in his closing statements, he said, talking of Kamala Harris, why didn't she do all of these things in the last 3.5 years? I mean, that is a question people will be questioning of her, to say, well, you're saying there's all these problems and you've got solutions to fix them, but, we didn't hear those and we didn't see action on them in the last 3 years. He might have had a more successful debate if he'd stuck to that line of questioning from the beginning.
Yeah, and to which she could have rebutted, well, you were so big on the wall and immigration, why didn't you do a darn thing for your 4 years? He would have said, well, they were impeaching me and indicted me and I was busy. Well, she would say, well, there were a couple of wars that started on our watch and we were also busy. And when we did concoct a bilateral solution to the border, you purposely sabotaged it to enhance your election possibilities this fall. And why did you do that? And he never answered that. So it was not a surprising display on either part. She's an accomplished rhetorician, very articulate, and quite, lively. And he is just a curmudgeonly, cranky old man who he just blurts out what he thinks and doesn't care what other people think, or never sees nuance. And so, I thought that was really quite an interesting contrast for people to draw. And she's already, 5 points ahead of him in terms of female votes, and more females vote in the elections than men. And I would think that this would definitely, between the abortion exchange and his disrespect toward her and his attitude and insults toward her, will certainly convince some women who aren't decided yet to say, hey, the guy isn't really, he's really awful.
The thing is, Diane, Donald Trump gave Donald Trump, didn't he? He acted as he has done before. You sort of just hinted at there that he was playing from the same playbook. I wonder if we learned enough about Kamala Harris that might persuade people who say, do you know what, I don't like Trump's policies. I don't like Trump personally, but I like his policies. Would those people have learned enough about how different Kamala Harris's policies might be to say, okay, and that they might be people who remember a more healthy economy under Donald Trump, to say, I've learned enough about the opposition that I could vote for them?
Well, she was quite specific when he wasn't. She was quite specific on the border. She said she would sign the bill that had been developed that he sabotaged. That would do a lot to helping the border situation. She also had specific disbursement she would give. There was a child birth bonus. There was a tax write-off for small business. There was a down payment tax help position. He, on the other hand, admitted that even though his staffers had prepared this 2025 plan, he hadn't read it.
What we have just read this morning, in sort of minutes after the debate's finished, is that Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris. Do you think that's going to change the minds of potentially young American voters?
I'm not surprised, and yes, it will. And so has Beyonce, if you want to add that to it, and many other of the pop musician world who allowed her at the Democratic National Convention, allowed the Democrats to use their music throughout the whole thing. It was like a musical. And whereas when Donald Trump borrowed the theme song from, I think it was from Titanic, Celine Dion, who owned part of the song, has threatened to sue him and wants to be paid, and said he never had any permission. She didn't want herself associated or her art associated with him. And that's happened a couple of times with him. So Taylor Swift, I think that's very interesting because she didn't come out. I think she wanted to see the debate, and good for her. And that's a lesson learned. Everybody should see this debate, whether they saw it tonight or they can see it on YouTube any other time. I think it's very important for people to see this because it does really showcase differences in style, differences in, I would say, cognitive aptitude, in rhetorical aptitude, and in positions taken.
Diane, thank you very much for your initial gut reaction to the debate that's played out in the last couple of hours. Diane Francis, the journalist there, speaking to me here on Times Radio. Well, Jim, I wonder what you make of that analysis. Trump said, look, everyone knows what I'm going to do. He sort of reiterated that you know what life was like in America underneath my leadership, and it will be much of the same this time around. But what hasn't changed is his personality and his tendency for bluster and misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, with him, what you see is what you get. That's both a blessing and a curse for him. She's the one that has to explain more about who she is and what she stands for. I think she made some progress on that score, but perhaps not enough. We'll see in the coming days. But he is who he is. I do think at the end, he missed an opportunity. I think he made some effective points at the end, but then he should have circled back into a more positive, optimistic outlook about what he would do, and his slogan about making America great again. He left it on a negative tinge, and I thought that was unfortunate from his vantage point.
And Jim, we can't get away from the body language. I mean, Kamala Harris started off nervous, but then was calm, sort of laughing, looking a bit indignant, really, at some of the things Donald Trump was saying, and raising her eyebrow and sort of inviting, sort of almost scorn at the ideas that he was putting across. And Donald Trump just looked at times quite cross and irritable and angry.
Yeah, I think that gets to the thing about the boxing match and the points. I think she scored on some of the substance and scored on appearance as well, and so I think that redounded to her favor. I do hearken back to in 2016, of course, Hillary Clinton, I think, won 3 debates in a row against him, and ultimately it didn't matter in terms of the election results. So this is, one more step to take, but we'll see how that comes out. Whether there's going to be another debate after this one, that's a big question. She may not want another one. He may or may not want another one. If it was on Fox, perhaps he would, but she probably wouldn't agree to that. So that'll be one interesting question